Bam. MC is in the house. Man, you can't make this shit up. I just, my computer just felt like resetting by itself. All right. I think we're good to go. Aaron, what's up, darling? Oh, appreciate it. I did. I had a great birthday yesterday. Thank you for commenting. Um, so today's been a little eventful, a lot of things going on. Jamie, what's up, brother man? I see you there too. Thank you for that. And little unprepared for today. And every once in a while, when I am unprepared to present a specific topic, I just get on here and see what you guys want to address. We could talk about anything you guys want. I've had a pretty productive week. Last weekend, I had the winter install event. I host two events a year, a smaller one in the winter and a larger one, the Pressure Con event in July. And this year we had a pretty good. Some of you guys may have seen it. A bunch of us from the event went on a hike in the middle of the woods, t-shirt and shorts, in sub-freezing temperature, which is an adventure in and of itself. I woke up today, and I was thinking about how fortunate I was that we didn't have to do that walk today because today it was under a zero when I woke up. It was I think 2 below zero where I'm at, and that's Fahrenheit. So cold as a motherfucker. Johnny Groove, what's up, brother man? So I don't know. Let's see if you guys could get me in trouble today. Let's think about a topic. I am really open to whatever. Every once in a while, you know, I have uh, I have just this inclination to just go full shock jock, and I have that inner responsible voice in my head telling me, "Nope, stay on mission, stay on mission. It's not your job to be the provocateur. It's not your job to just piss everybody off with no regard for any mission." So let's see what we got here. Stop disrespecting God of the universe. Uh, this person says, "Are you AI? You look like AI." I guess I don't know. I think AI has progressed a fair bit, so I think it. I don't think it's the insult that it used to be. I think the insult now is like Timu. Like Timu. Like I guess if I look like a Timu version of somebody, it'd be bad. Is that what the kids are saying? Arminius Unstoppable says He's probably noticing your Thor's hammer on the wall, and he's a Christian. Don't worry, Arminius. I catch on quicker than it may appear on the internet. Oh, fucking hilarious. Aaron writes, a great indicator of a man's value is the ease at which he's willing to walk away from a job poorly done. Right on. So that's one of my quotes from this morning's email. I had a good time writing that email. I had gotten one of my guys that had purchased the friction audit had sent me a testimonial yesterday. Like literally, the guy Josh is a buddy of mine who got it and sent me that feedback. And I was like, you know what? Let me just write an email about that. And that segued into that whole other thing I went into. You're on Saxo. What's up, Don? Good to see you. Aaron says, speaking of that hammer, I don't know if you ever got back to me on it, but where did you get that hammer? I'm almost certain I got this on an Etsy shop. I don't know where. I have to look. I tell you what. I promise you, I'm going to look to see if I could find the receipt because I've had it for a couple of years. So there might be a link in my email. Judge Cohen, what's up, brother man? Aditya says, good night, the AI rock. Likes your stream. The AI rock. Oh, right on. Right on. Aaron said, I did not mean to write that hammer twice in that comment. Anyway, thank you. No, I already saw it once. Don't worry about that. Good to go. Howdy, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. Hysterical. All right. I guess sometimes too, I'm getting a little bit more traction lately, and not that there's a million people watching the stream, but it brings in the trolls. So I've had to ban I think 4 people so far. So what are you gonna do? So Jamie asked, "What are your thoughts on Greenland?" You know, it's funny. I'll be honest. I don't know much about it. And I think there's a point there where I'm not fully aware of everything going on in the political landscape right now, and I don't mean that to be fucking like to be an asshole. I'm not being you know like that, and I think Jamie knows that. But just for the viewers, um, it's really I do not follow a lot of the news because so much of it has absolutely nothing to do with what I can control. And again, it's even that sounds like I'm being like a pain in the ass about it, and I'm not. Um, I'm just a believer in focusing on what you have to do during the day, and I've got a lot of moving parts in my day, right? I got a lot of, at times spinning plates, right? That's the phrase. A lot of people relying on me. I got a lot of things that I have to do. A lot of, visions and missions that I'm on, and I don't usually find the time to sort of check in with what's going on right now. Like I'll give you an example. This morning, I was on the treadmill this morning, and I I think I put on like there was a video Don Lemon got in trouble because he like went and protested, and they got me with the fucking with the headline. Admittedly, I forget the channel it was, but it said, "Is Don Lemon going to be arrested by a law meant to stop the KKK?" And it's like, all right, I'll give this 2 minutes. And apparently, him and a bunch of fucking crazy people like stampeded a Christian church service, um, and like literally you can't do that. They had a law because the Klan used to do that to like black churches apparently. Whatever the case is, but I found that to be slightly entertaining. Um, a lot of times when I'm on the treadmill, like I, I lose my mind. That's why I go on a lot of hikes. You guys will see if you follow me, especially on Instagram. I usually put videos up, but I just go stir crazy. So I'm usually just keeping myself stimulated, watching nonsense, and it's nice to say, or to at least plan on going to you know to just do work or watch something productive, and a lot of times I do, but if I'm on there, like I did 45 minutes this morning, and if I reach like the 20-minute mark and I'm like just going crazy, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like I want to get off, I want to do something else. I have to just watch something to pass the time, and it's usually like this, just this garbage, almost gossipy shit going on. But as far as Greenland, I should probably uh, read up on what's going on with that. The only thing that I was exposed to is that Trump saying he's going to take it, basically, and I really don't know much about that. But you guys know that I don't give a fuck about talk about anything, but I literally just don't know. Aaron, I appreciate that. All right. Aaron Sachs says, yes, the idiot went into a church because the pastor is the head of ICE in the cities. I'm so sick of these dipshits. Oh yeah, ICE. It's funny. I think I've had these conversations before. You guys have been following me for a while. No, this is nothing new, but we it is absolutely legal to destroy the fabric of American culture in this country. And what do I mean by that? If the country is filled with pieces of shit, there is no document that's going to prevent it from decaying, from eroding. And right now, and if you guys have ever seen my Dominion cycle, this is the point where all of the weak people, all of the people whose strength only comes from the sort of bureaucratic infrastructure of government and these artificial environments that big cities and municipalities create. They're very good at a game that's inherently unnatural, right? Or I would say less than natural. It's the product of nature, but I think you understand. There's a disconnect from the skills you build in thriving in a city environment or a bureaucracy than the skills that have served men well from the beginning of time, tribally, naturally, etc. And you're seeing the product of that. You're seeing a bunch of kids who are very emotional and very angry over things that, by comparison, are so insignificant to other things that are going on that represent people that are much closer to them. There was one guy I saw in that Don Lemon video I was watching. It wasn't the Don Lemon video. It was somebody making a video about Don Lemon, and hence Don Lemon video. And this guy, white guy, and everyone's a white supremacist. And how come they're not helping their Hispanic and Somali brothers? It's like, listen, my name's Garcia, but I'm pretty much, there's no Somalis in my family. So this idea of we're all one, it's about as amenable. Is that the word? Amenable. It's about as nice as Marxism is going to look like. This centralized perspective that so many of these kids have. They've never suffered. Some of them feel guilty for it. They're buying into narratives that they were sort of, just raised on. The amount of brainwashing that's gone into this generation because of media. It's not something that logic is going to undo. That's the thing. So, and let me connect those points. You'll have somebody that's raised by a liberal family in a urban environment, goes to government school, goes through maybe the university system, which is even more Marxist than regular school, than non-university schools. And here they are at 25, 28, 30 years old, and they're attacking ICE members because of Mexicans and Somalis or whatever the fuck they're trying to preserve at the moment. There is no information that's going to disarm them. There's no information that they're going to go, oh, I didn't look at it that way. But you'll still see, and this is why they gain the momentum they do, because I think to some extent, and I am not calling for violence, right? I'm not calling for violence. But what I am saying is they are beyond the discussion, they're beyond the conversation. Now, what means are going to be used to control these people, to limit the amount of damage these people can do? It's like, yeah, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be something that's desired necessarily, but that's the problem. There is no other choice. These people are leaving no other choice. So when it gets to the point that the government now has to start smacking down citizens who can't fucking behave themselves, they wind up getting more power, more overreach, more support in the short run. Like go Google the fucking Patriot Act, kids. See how that came about. It's because everybody was worked up into a frenzy and supporting this action that nobody really had the foresight, not nobody, but many people, the majority of people didn't understand that once government gets power, no matter how well intentioned, they're never going to give it back. It has to be taken away from them. And this is how it happens, right? So all these people that are talking about, fascism, and it's like, you don't know what the fucking fascist country looks like. You don't know, and it's always this. I've never gone, to college and taken political science. I mean, there is a limitation to my understanding of how these positions were born, how they originated, how they, I know plenty. I know a functional level to where these types of ideas are only born of intellectuals. They're only born of these people who are disconnected from the everyday process. These people have never built anything. These people, take this objective, what they think is an objective view of what life is, and they say these people have this amount, these people have less amount. That's not right. And obviously, there are much more variables at play in why there's disparity amongst different groups. But then, not only do they come up with these inaccurate, limited, biased assessments of reality, but then to add suffering to circumstance, they then come up with a formula that they think is going to resolve it. And that's what you'll see. You'll see a lot of people making points. I've got 4 kids, and 3 teenage boys, and my girl is 10 going on, 30. And what I see in that age group are a lot of conclusions without the experience to sort of enable them to sort of show their work, right? Like back when you're in math class, show your work. They've got a lot of conclusions, a lot of what I would say complete positions based on incomplete information. And the fact that they're inaccurate says nothing to the fact that they also believe that they are 100% accurate. My kids believe what they're saying when they share these conclusions on how things are supposed to be. But I understand the context of their limited amount of experience, even in rational thinking, because they don't understand the limitations of their position. It's a little early in the day to close your mind up already, right? So when I look at these kids that have just been inundated with Marxist information since the time, that they were children, I don't wonder why they think like this. I don't like. I get it, and it's not the conclusion that I think they even want people to have, because my whole thing is, yeah, you're right, we can't talk to you. I know that if somebody, were to physically like break into my house or look to overtake my property, or like they're playing with fire that they don't understand. I just saw a video the other day, one of these quick, funny little videos where they had a guy in Canada, right? And I know a lot of Canadians. I really like a lot of Canadians, but holy shit, Canada is fucking up. The government there is it's getting worse by the day. And there was a police chief, police captain, whatever, who was saying to its citizens, to the Canadian citizens, if you find yourself somebody breaking into your home, we ask citizens not to take the matter into their own hands and to, seek refuge away from the threat and call 911. And then it, by contrast, shows like the sheriff from he's got to be from Florida or, excuse me, or Texas or something. And he's like, to all the criminals out there, my citizens have guns. I encourage them to use them. And you couldn't get more opposite, more of a polarized take on a situation. And I think when you look at where these kids are, they have an expectation of how people are going to respond to them. And I would say, firstly, they don't understand that they're really cannon fodder. Like these are the useful idiots that are thrown in the way to absorb, all of the responses that the people behind the curtain anticipate. But eventually, these people are looked at as sacrificial lambs and martyrs and everything, and the people coming behind them are that much more prepared. Years ago, I said, we train our enemy when we fight them. We should not be looking to create fights with enemies unless we're ready to end everything, that fight and every fight that happens after it. Why? Because these little skirmishes are, reconnaissances. They're information gathering, exchanges. You'll get these Marxists, from 10 years ago, the Antifa. I remember my first time running into Antifa at some event I was going to, and I had some old white lady call me a white supremacist, and I was like, "How are you calling me a white supremacist?" It was just the irony, obviously. And since then, it's become so normalized. It's just when you look at how these people act, the last thing we expect is rational thinking. And it's not that they're low IQ. You'll get these college students, they're not stupid. Some of them are, don't get me wrong, but some of them, it's beyond the sort of emotional barrier that every person has to sort of protect themselves from being, dysfunctionally, emotionally vulnerable. And these kids get themselves just into, again, I said before, into a fervor. And it just doesn't make, it's like you could just tell somebody's never done something in the real world. It's like, I'm going to need you to calm down. I need you to sit down, take a breath, and speak to me like an adult individual. And some of these people just aren't capable of that. They should, I could say should, whatever that means in this context, but I would say they should understand that if they're being overly emotional, they should know that they're presenting a lesser version of themselves in whatever conflict that they're in. They should want to be a little bit more calculated, a little bit more present, intellectually, and not as reactive emotionally. But I just don't understand how people still tolerate that behavior from these Antifa types. It just doesn't make any sense to me. We got some comments here. If you guys got any questions, put them in the chat. Judge Coleman says, just lemon nuts behaving like the man he is. I'm surprised he didn't ignite upon entry. Yep. Aaron asks, when did you start drinking energy drinks as opposed to coffee? Or have you ever regularly drank coffee? Because I can't imagine that for some reason. I absolutely despise coffee. I grew up in a house where my parents drank coffee every day. And I have tried not every, but multiple, flavors and roasts. And I'd tried eating coffee ice cream and see if I could develop a taste. And it's just disgusting to me. So it's usually one energy drink, after the next. And right now, for the last couple of years, it's been White Monsters. But just not a coffee fan. I tried. Jamie says, here in Canada, you could topple and otherwise vandalize statues of the fathers of the Confederation, but if you leave a skid mark on a rainbow someone painted in the street where cars drive, it's a hate crime. Yeah, it's just at this point it's not a mystery anymore. Like there's a point where it's almost understandable that you'll have people that are outraged at seeing how people behave. Like these crazy, leftists and the gay tranny, like all that bullshit. And you're like, I can't believe that these people are. I think we're past that as a society. I, for one, am not a big believer in men being outraged over anything. It's just a useless fucking, reaction to a situation. But I think now we start to understand what the game is. And the game is to give all control to the government and then centralize the governments of the world into one government. It's like it's not that complicated, but I think for a long time it was so far-fetched in the minds of the people, right? The Overton window was so far from a place where that could even be considered. Everything was the conspiracy of the conspiracy of the conspiracy. And now it's like, I think it's an easier question to ask. And I have, like, why wouldn't they do that? If you're in a position, you think of Soros, he's looking to destroy countries and, like, why? But why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't somebody who sees themselves at the highest level of accomplishment, achievement in life, whether that is or not, it's irrelevant, but somebody who sees himself that way, why wouldn't he try to discover what the next layer of power is going to be? I mean, it's literally like a played out plot device for fiction. This idea of a bad guy wanting to take over the world, because that is a rung on the ladder, right? So long as, everything's on Earth, it's like taking over the Earth is, I guess, the final boss of the game, so to speak. And there are people who are in it to play and win that game. Why wouldn't there be? Right? As society is more sort of melded together, as cultures are watered down and some of its most valuable elements discarded, for convenience and, under the flag of innovation and improvement and progress, a lot of what keeps people grounded as an individual is just being thrown away. So it's like, yeah, thousands of years ago it was bread and circuses, but what's today's version of it? Doom scrolling and playing video games and sports. And this is a society where you could have somebody playing a game and make tens of millions of dollars a year for playing this game because of how much money it generates. I understand the economics of it, but the economics are only going to be there if the culture supports those economics. If everybody isn't sacrificing their own personal assent, to just stay connected to what the latest game says or what their team did, like, of course this is going to be where the economics is going. It makes you wonder as a mental exercise, pulling yourself back from it and asking, like, what if nobody wanted to watch professional sports anymore? Like, what if what would the country or the world look like if nobody wanted to play sports anymore? Now, I understand there are some silver linings in some countries, third world countries, where, the idea of playing this game or seeing their heroes gives people hope and energy and, to sort of progress and push. I get it. But let's say that that's the cost. What does it look like then? A lot of the kids today, they can't even remember that they probably weren't even alive during a society that didn't have the internet, where you were so much more effectively plugged into your circumstances and your environment. And it was just a different way to be. It's certainly an easier way to forge your identity when you weren't in this sort of narcissism incentivized fake reality of the internet and social media platforms. It was just a different time. My kids, they're homeschooled, and there's always going to be an awkwardness with homeschool kids where they don't quite act like the kids that were what, brainwashed and molded by the public school system. I was a little weird growing up. Like I was good at sports, right? The athletics, and that might be something that is still inherently valuable. The benefits you get from training in athletics, building a relationship with your body, learning teamwork and perseverance, through a physical lens in the beginning, and transitioning those lessons into other applications as you get older. It's like, yeah, all that's still valuable. But when I was a kid growing up, like I was a loner a lot of the time. Any popularity I had from playing sports. I had buddies here and there, and but for the most part, I like being by myself. I was a little weird. So when I look at my kids, and my kids aren't like fucking weirdos, don't get me wrong, but they certainly don't act like the kids who went to school, as expected. And I don't even have to say better or worse. They act better or worse than the other kids. What I will say is my kids certainly noticeably act more in accordance with who they are as an individual because they've been given the encouragement and the space to actually build that relationship. There was a time where all kids were able to do that because of how much time you spent just experiencing the world physically. Now people are being shoehorned into this acceptance of this virtual existence that, listen, great power can come from, the technology that the internet represents, obviously, but there's also a liability that should be considered by anybody who doesn't want to lose their individuality for the sake of complying to what the latest expert is saying is progress. Like there are still a lot of very strong-minded, grounded individuals, but they don't get that way from doing the things that all the other people are incentivized to do. So getting back to these sort of leftist types, these Marxist types, it's almost cliche, these kids. It's like it's always some rich kid, a well-off kid with parents that are guilt-ridden and unable to control their kids, because not only are they guilty, do they feel guilty about all these, these talking points, these narratives of oppression and everything, the whole white guilt thing, but then they also have their new ideas, their own ideas about parenting. So not only do they have this dysfunctional philosophy and sort of political outlook, but then they also don't even have the process to raise functional kids. They allow these kids to be who they want. Listen, my favorite movie, The Princess Bride, the director, Rob Reiner. All right, how'd that go? How'd that parenting process go? And I don't want to be, I don't want to act too inappropriately, like it's tragic and all that. And for all of obviously my disagreements with Rob Reiner, the public celebrity, he did direct, The Princess Bride. So I got a special place for him. But, you look at how he conducted himself, you look at how, and I think this is a good way to say it. You have these people who think they know better than nature. They know better than reality. Like sometimes people could have a very low IQ, but have observed a phenomenon over and over again to the point where they see the causal dynamic. When this happens next. When that happens next. And they see it over and over again. Somebody who is intellectually superior can show up on the scene and say, when that happens, I anticipate this other thing is going to happen. And this person go, nope, when that happens, that happens. The fact that the person who just showed up is intellectually superior says nothing to the wisdom that an individual who has observed this dynamic over and over again, what his position is. And that's what a lot of the youth isn't connecting with these days. Old wisdom. Old wisdom. I'm a fan of Nietzsche. And when you look at how he describes consciousness and its purpose, its limitations, there is a point where I would say that, yeah, we do sometimes too much figuring out. We don't do enough moving. We know what feels good, what feels right, what feels strong, what we're compelled to do. And there's a responsible way to do that, to go about that. But to sort of repress all of those things and just say, I'm going to follow the rules because I'm conflict averse, or I'm going to follow the rules because then I'll get all the things that they're bribing me with by doing those things. It's like, oh, do you get the new phone? Do you really need a new fucking phone? Oh yeah, the sensor on it, they improved it by 33%, and the aperture, and it's like, at this point, I'm pretty sure just about every camera on every phone that's made is enough. Like, it's enough. But it's the game that they've convinced people to play. Every couple of years I get a new phone. Why? Because they have this, what do they call it? Planned obsolescence. At some point, an old phone just stops fucking working. And it's like, what the fuck happened with this phone? I didn't drop the fucking thing. And it just stops working. So then I got to get a new phone. That's the game we play. But to sit here and just have this sort of love affair with all the things that they want to buy us, or tell us to buy, rather, it's in order to reject, or to fight against, to repel this allure to become this consumer, right? This consumerist zombie that the elites of society would love for us to be. You need to have an identity that you're grounded to. If you don't know who you are, you can only argue with somebody who's telling who you are. It's like, if I'm a vegan, I always go with this example, right? But if I'm a vegan and somebody says, here are all the reasons why you should eat meat, I'm going to say no because I'm a vegan. I'm not going to consider the arguments if I'm a vegan, because I feel that whatever benefit their arguments represent, I'm already accessing those benefits in my own way, being a vegan. And I understand there's some holes in this analogy. Just go with it for a second. But my point is, if you know who you are, it's not that you could win a debate about who you are with somebody who's telling you otherwise. It's that you lose the motivation or the necessity to talk to them at all in the first place. I don't need people to tell me who I am. I don't need people to tell me what I should be doing, what I should be eating, what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is strong, what is weak. I have a relationship with that. If I'm dysfunctional in any of those values in my life, I'm going to seek out guidance from people who I respect, who have demonstrated an aptitude for whatever it is that I'm talking about. But the bright, shiny objects, just because it's brighter and newer doesn't mean that it's better. Easier said than done. This is certainly not a new problem for people. But the stakes are rising. Why? Because the world's getting smaller. What else we got going on here? Judge Cohen writes, the new kids are rejecting the weakness millennials and Gen Y are embracing. The new Gen X. Yep. Derek, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. AC says, I wonder who funds these Antifa types of groups. It's Soros, it's Soros types. It's all the people that benefit from the unrest, all the people that benefit from the centralization of power. You know, if you look at the erosion of the family, I don't want to get too political. Just keep it general so people could understand the sentiment I'm trying to share. If you destroy the family, you just sever the connection to all the benefits that a family provides. If somebody has what they feel is a better idea, we have to understand first and foremost that their idea is just a theory until it's proven. And I think a lot of people had theories about what would benefit people when the family was broken down and people were incentivized to not have stable nuclear families. And I think at this point, I think now is a good time as any to say, yeah, that they were wrong. It turns out, you look at all the detrimental effects of fathers not being in the homes, of parents not getting married, the over sexualization of society, the sort of just growth into more and more degenerate, dysfunctional behavior being normalized. Now it's trannies and they're knocking on the door of the what's it called? The pedos, when they try to sound like it's just a scientific thing. What do they call themselves? Uh, something young attracted or something like that. I don't fucking know the name, but they have some term to sort of, it's like some PR firm. It sounds like no, don't say little kids. Don't say you're a pedo. Say you're this thing, just to normalize it. It's like, why wouldn't they try to do this again? The more you invest in understanding who you are, the less vulnerable you are to this nefarious messaging from all these different sources. It's not about get them to stop trying to do this. It's like, no, make sure that they never get any traction. Now, just in case, with what I'm talking about, you still have some hope. Let me take that little bit of hope away too. Now, the fall, I would say, of Western society in its current form is inevitable. I believe that as I believe anything. There is a cyclical nature of how these things are going to work. It's observed throughout history. And I think right now we're seeing the end of one era and what will eventually be the ashes from which the next era is going to begin. And we could say it's good, bad, but at this point, and this is, I think I'll end with this. It brings me back to the same conclusion that I've been sharing, no matter what circumstances we're being subjected to. Be physically strong, be mentally strong, strengthen your tribe, be around people that are going to multiply the force of who you are. Try to create value for people so that you represent a positive, synergistic output for others. People should want to be around you. They should want to connect with you and invest in you. And you could only do that if you have the ability to create value for them. As much as I'm somebody who is absolutely dedicated to the idea of physical and mental strength and having a relationship with violence and, all these practical, applications of training, I also believe wholeheartedly that we should always be looking to create alliances with people that we could create a synergy with, because if that piece isn't there, then it would be me saying, just try and conquer the world, everybody together, or everybody separately. Like we'll fight when it's just us, like the Highlander. Like I'm not telling you to go out there and chop off heads. It's no, be as strong as you could possibly be. So much so that other strong people see you as a worthwhile ally. And that's how you build a network of capable individuals. So I'm going to end it there. That's a pretty good Q&A. But next week I'll be here, same time. I appreciate you all. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.